Hi, so today we're going to be looking at the Italian opening from White's perspective. The Italian opening's a very popular opening, and the reason why I think an opening like this is so good is because it's played anywhere from beginner level all the way up to Grandmaster level. And I wanted to break down the basic concepts playing as White and what the most common setups are and how to go about playing this opening. If you are anyone that's played chess online, that's played probably over 20 games, you've probably played a variation of the Italian opening at least once or twice. For me, I feel like this is one of the most popular openings that's just played full stop. So it's very important to learn what the common principles are for both White and Black. Specifically, we're going to be looking at White's perspective a bit more. But one thing with Italian Open is the play and the themes are quite symmetrical. So a lot of the moves and the concepts that you play with White can also be mirrored with Black as well. Just a bit of background, this opening's been around since the 1500s. And the reason why I think it's such a popular opening is that it includes a lot of core principles such as developing your pieces early, controlling the centre, castling early, and there's lots of different variations and moves in some of the deeper lines of this opening, which is why I think it's played a lot by Grandmasters as well. Today we're going to be looking at it just from more of a beginner's perspective, so if you already know the Italian game quite well, you probably won't get much use out of this video, but this is for people that just want to learn the basics in a few minutes. Some of the pros of this opening are it starts with e4 and it includes a lot of basic concepts such as developing your knights and developing your bishops quite early on. Oftentimes it's centered around trying to gain space and control the center, and also it often includes casting quite early as well, so it's a pretty secure, safe opening. Probably one of the downfalls of this opening is that one, a lot of people know it, so to get a good advantage in this opening, I feel like you have to learn more than just the first 4 or 5 moves and actually study some of the attacking and defensive principles. Also, it's not a super aggressive opening that immediately puts a lot of pressure on Black's position, so it does oftentimes allow Black to get a good opening as well. But here are the main principles of the Italian opening. So the Italian game for White starts with playing e4, then when Black follows up with e5, White plays the move f3, and Black follows with c6. Now this is obviously very common stuff and can lead to lots of openings such as the Spanish, the Scotch, etc. But the Italian starts when White plays the move bishop c4, putting the bishop in the centre of the board, pointing towards the f7 square. There are quite a few variations here, including Black developing the knight, the bishop, or even pushing the pawn. So I'm only going to really go over the main lines here and some of the most common positions and tricks, because with the Italian opening there are so many different variations and different kind of nuances past the first kind of 5 moves. One of the key themes in the Italian for White is putting pressure on this square f7. So the bishop's already pointing there, so if Black were to play the natural developing move knight f6, White can now play the move g5, taking this pawn on f7, and if Black plays a random move, let's say pushing this pawn here, White can play knight takes f7, forking the rook and the queen, and obviously Black can't take the knight because it's defended by the bishop, so obviously this would be losing for Black. So in this position here, Black needs to play the move d5 to prevent this from happening, and White's natural follow-up here is to take with the pawn, and then Black's best move here is actually playing a5, trying to target this bishop. Now it's very rare you're going to see this exact position at beginner level, but it's just worth noting that if Black does play this early f6 move with the knight, you might want to consider going for the weakness on f7. If you do get a position where it's like this, take here, and then the best move for White now is to play actually b5, this is still a very open game and can swing both sides. I would say White's probably better just because they're one move away from castling, but it's still pretty much drawn here. Most likely when White plays bishop c4, Black's next move is most likely going to be c5 with the bishop, and this is called the Gucci piano variation of the Italian, and this is probably the most common variation. The idea here is that White can't play the move g5 with the knight, as this square is actually covered by Black's queen. Now if White wants to carry on normal play here, White plays d3 to get this bishop out here, so it can come on any of these squares on the diagonal. Black can play the move knight f6, developing the knight, and then White can simply just castle. Alternatively, White can play the move g5, pinning the knight to the Black queen, and then Black can either castle or push the pawn to d6. It doesn't really matter which order they play the move in this sequence. but there's a few things to be aware of in this position. If, let's say, you play this move here and then black would castle, if you then develop the knight to c3 and then black plays, let's say, a random move such as pushing the d6 pawn, one of the key tricks in the Italian is to jump in with d5 here, putting a lot of pressure on this pin, where black can't really move the black queen, because once taken it's going to open up the king side, white's going to be up a pawn. So let's say in this position black plays a more normal move such as pushing h6. This is really going to damage black's position here, because once white takes black's knight here, black has to take back with the pawn. White can simply move back with the bishop, and black's king's wide open here. So even though there is a material balance, black's definitely much worse here. And because white hasn't committed by castling short, white can now move the rook onto the g file, push these pawns, and even move the queen up to start attacking this pawn here. And it's going to be very unlikely that black even survives this position, especially at the beginner level. So this whole concept of pinning the knight in the Italian is a very common move, and this knight jump to d5 is also very common. And you'll often see positions where white even takes the knight, black takes back with the queen, and white jumps in with the knight, attacking the queen and also threatening this pawn here to attack the rook. So in this position here, black's only move is to move back with the queen. Again, black's completely fine in this position and can eventually just reroute this knight to kick this knight out. But this is something to be cautious of. Instead of developing this bishop to g5, another common practice is to put it on e3 instead. Now what this is doing is this is offering a trade of bishops, and on the surface black might think, oh, I can take this and it doubles white's pawn, but me personally, I actually really like it when black trades the bishop here, because one, once I've castled, it opens up the f file for the rook. Also, having doubled pawns on this e file is actually really good, as it also helps support pushing this d4 pawn eventually, and also stops any knight jumps here, where obviously this white pawn controls a lot more of the centre. A lot of times you won't see black actually take here, and black will just move their bishop back, and the whole purpose is if white wants to trade bishop, it does it on black's terms, and it actually opens up the a file for black, and black's rook has a better scope now. So again, in this position you'll often see two bishops kind of staring each other down with some tension, but at beginner level you'll see a lot of people actually take this bishop, and this is actually very good for white in my opinion. Apart from that, a normal Italian setup normally looks like just developing the pieces. So now in this position you might see white play d2 just to connect the rooks and support this bishop here, and then you might see black do the same thing. And then after this, once all the pieces have been developed, you might want to put the rooks on both the e and d file, and then development is complete for white, and black will probably do the same as well. In this position I wouldn't say white or black have a specific advantage, as you can see the position is literally completely symmetrical, and in the Italian game you are going to get a lot of symmetrical positions. The two kind of small advantages I would look out for when developing for white is whether you can exploit black on this pin and then have the knight jump into these squares here, or whether you can trade off this bishop early on e3 and have doubled pawns on the e file with an open f file for the rook to use. They're two small advantages I personally like to get as white. There is one other small advantage I'd like to get with white as well, and that's when you develop the bishop to g5, black oftentimes try to kick the bishop out straight away by playing h6, in which case you can move back, and if black hasn't castled short, a lot of times they will make the committal move of playing g5, again trying to kick the bishop out further. What you can actually do here is sacrifice the knight in exchange for two pawns, and what this does is it keeps the pin alive, stops black castling short because of the lack of pawns that would defend the black king, and then let's say black goes g8 to try and attack the bishop, you can actually just push this pawn to defend the bishop, and let's say black plays a random move like pushes d6. White can jump into c3 with the hope to then go d5 to then put even more pressure on this knight. So it's a similar kind of setup as before, but the whole point is you're sacrificing the knight to get this kind of position. Also in the long term, this could be pretty dangerous for black, as you've got two potential pass pawns that could run up the board and try and promote. Also these are backed by the h rook and also the queen on d1. These are just some common things to look out for when playing the Italian, specifically the mainline Gucci piano game as a beginner. Because this opening is so popular, a lot of beginner players won't know all these kind of positions, so you can get an advantage with this opening just by knowing these basics. In this position here there are other variations such as playing the Evans Gambit, and also playing c3 is very common here with the intention of playing d4 and being very aggressive in the centre. This comes with lots of different variations as well, so I won't get into it, but are definitely worth studying because a lot of people do play this. At beginner level though, from my experience, it's mainly just developing the knights and getting a kind of symmetrical position. I will be making other videos on all the different variations of the Italian, so I did hope you learned some things from this video. It was a bit messy, but I was just trying to give a bit of an understanding for beginners on some common ideas for the Italian game and how to get the most out of this opening.